Hello and welcome to Math with Mrs. Havrilla. This is Mrs. Havrilla, and today we're going to be going over the Unit 4 Lesson 16 homework page. On this homework page, we are finishing up our section for addition or multiplication and division. And so we just have a couple word problems that we're going to be working through today. Starting with number 1, I'll go ahead and read the problem. It says 1,092 flowers are arranged in 28 vases, with an equal number of flowers in each vase. A asks, how many flowers are in each vase? Well, I can see here that there are 1,092 flowers arranged in 26 vases. And I see this keyword equal, so I know that I'm going to be splitting the number of flowers into the 26 vases equally. To do that, I'm going to divide. The equation is going to be 1,092 flowers divided by 26 vases. So let me go ahead and set that up. 1,092 divided by 26. The 1,092 is my dividend, so it goes inside of this sort of house thing that we build. And then the 26 is my divisor, so it goes outside. And what I'm doing is I'm going to be trying to use the partial quotient strategy, which has me multiplying the divisor, the 26, times different numbers to figure out how many total groups I'm going to end up with. And to do that, I'm going to use some of my sort of estimating skills. So the first number I'd be looking at is the 1, but I know 26 can't go into 1. Then I would look at the 10, but again, I know 26 can't go into 10, which means I'm going to have to go all the way to the 109, and I'm trying to figure out how many times 26 can go into 109. To do that, again, I want to use my estimating skills. So let's say this were 25. I know my 25's times tables pretty well. I would count 25, 50, 75, 100. And in order for me to do that, I had to subtract 1 away from this 26. So really, it would be 4 more than that 100, making it 104. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put 26 times 4, because I'm estimating that 4 groups can fit in. And again, I'm doing 26 times 4. So 20 times 4 is 80. 6 times 4 is 24. So 80 and 24 is 104. And I'm placing that 104 directly under the 109 that I was trying to see how many times the 26 fits inside of. But then when I do that, I can see that I have a 0 here, or a blank space here. So I'm going to fill that blank space with a 0. And because I'm filling it with a 0 here, I'm going to be going ahead and filling it with a 0 over here. So now the number that I have down is actually representing the product of 26 and 40 instead of 26 and 4. I'll go ahead and subtract. That's going to leave me with 52 left over. And I know that 26 times 2 is 52. So I'll go ahead and subtract. Now that I'm at 0, I'm going to be paying attention to what I have over here. Specifically, I'm looking at how many groups of 26 I made. First, I made 40 groups of 26. And then I made 2 groups of 46. I'm going to combine those two numbers together so that I know that 1,092 is going to end up being 42 groups of 26. So my answer is 42. What does that 42 represent? It represents 42 flowers in each vase. Question B is asking how many flowers will be needed to fill 130 vases arranged in the same way. So if I know that there are 42 flowers in a vase, because that's what I just figured out, and I know that there are 130 vases, well, I'm just going to take those two numbers and multiply them together. So 130 vases times 42 flowers in a vase. Because I'm multiplying a 2-digit factor here, that means I'm going to end up with two partial products that I have to add together. So I'll start with 2 times 0, which is 0, 2 times 3, which is 6, and 2 times 1, which is 2. Now I have to do the 4, and the 4 sits in the 10 place value, which means the first answer I write down has to be in the 10 place value. That means my 1 place value is open, so I'll put a placeholder, a 0. Now I'll do 4 times 0, which is 0, 4 times 3, which is 12, so I'll place the 2 of 12, and I'll carry the 1. And then 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5. Now I can add these two numbers together. And I end up with 5,460 flowers. This is how many flowers will be needed to fill all 130 vases. Make sure, just like always, you're including all of your work on the page. I know I do it on the whiteboard, but I should be seeing your work on the page. Flipping over to the back, we have number 2. Number 2 says, a political gathering in South America was attended by 7,910 people. Each of South America's 14 countries was equally represented. How many representatives attended from each country? So, I can see I've got some important information here. So one bit of information is there are a total of 7,910 people. And then the other bit of information I have is 14 different countries. And I see this keyword equally again, so I know I'm going to be dividing. So I'm going to need to take the number of people and divide by the number of countries that they're from. So 7,910 people divided out between 14 different countries, and that's going to tell me how many people are in each, or how many people are from each country. I'll go ahead and set it up as my partial quotient. So 7,910 divided by 14. All right, when I do that, I'm trying to figure out how many times the 14 can go into these numbers. Starting with the 7, it can't go into 7. It's not big enough. So I'll have to look at the whole 79 here, which means I'm going to have to think about my 14's times tables. And we might not all know our 14's times tables, but if you know them, you would know that 14 can go into 17 or 79 5 times. To do that multiplication, I would do 10 times 5, which is 50, and then 4 times 5, which is 20, and add those together, 50 plus 20, to get 70. So 14 times 5 is 70. Now, I can see here that I have an empty space under the 1 and an empty space under the 0. So what I'm going to need to do is fill in both of those empty spaces with zeros. In doing so, I also need to fill in 2 zeros after my 5, turning my 5 into 500. So now I know that 14 times 500 is 7,000. I'll go ahead and subtract. That leaves me with 910. So now I'm just going to repeat that process. I know that I can't do 9, so I have to look at the whole 91 here. And 14 is going to be able to fit into 91 6 times. I know that because 5 times was 70. So 6 times, I just have to add another 14, making it 84. 14 times 6 is 84. I've put it under the 91 here. But I can see there's an empty space under the 0, so I'll fill in that extra 0 there, which means I'll fill in an extra 0 on my 6, making it 60. 14 times 60 is 840. I'll go ahead and subtract. Now I end up with 70. I already know from up here that 14 times 5 was 70. So I'll go ahead and do 14 times 5 and get 70. And then I can subtract to 0. Once I've subtracted to 0, I need to add up all of the numbers that I have here on the side. And these numbers are going to give me my total answer. I have 500 plus 60 plus 5, which is 565. I'll put that answer at the top in a box. And that answer represents the total number of people that are representing each country. 565 people from each of the 14 different countries. Last one, number 3. All right. Number 3 says that while preparing food for a morning conference, Mr. Hayes laid out 8 dozen bagels on platters. If each platter holds 16 bagels, how many platters will Mr. Hayes fill? Well, I have a couple bits of information here. First, I know that he has 8 dozen bagels that he's put out. And second, I know that each platter holds 16 bagels. So the first thing that I really need to know is, what is a dozen? A dozen is a unit of measure that's usually used to measure food items. Think about going to the store and getting a dozen eggs. That number is 12. So anytime you hear somebody talking about getting a dozen of something, you know that they mean they're going to be getting 12 of it. So in this case, he got 8 dozen, or 8 sets of 12, which means I need to figure out exactly how much that is by multiplying. So he got 8 dozen cookies, so 8 times 12, and I'll put the 12 on top. I'll start by doing 8 times 2, which is 16, placing the 6 and carrying the 1. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So that means that 8 dozen bagels, 8 dozen bagels is 96 total bagels. Now that I know that there are 96 bagels, it tells me that every platter holds 16 bagels. So I'm going to have to take the number of bagels and divide it by the number that I can put on each platter, 16, to get my total number of platters. So I'll do 96 divided by 16. All right. In order to do this one, I am using my, maybe I don't know my math tables for my 16s, but I know that 16 times 10 is 160. And if I cut that in half, that's 80. If I cut 10 in half, that's 5. So here's what's happening in my head. I'm thinking to myself, 16 times 10 is 160. And I know I could cut that 10 in half. Half of 10 is 5. So half of 160 is 80. So I'm going to start with 80. I'm going to say 16 times 5 is going to be 80. And I'll subtract that 80. Because remember, I'm trying to keep numbers that are easy for me to do. That means that the numbers I'm using might not exactly be the same numbers that you're using. I'm left with 16 left over. Well, I know that if I have 16 bagels and 16 bagels fit on each platter, then that's only going to be one more platter, 16 times 1. 16 times 1 is 16, and I'll go ahead and subtract to 0. Looking at my final answer here, 5 and 1 of 6. So the answer is 6 platters of bagels. We knew we had 96 bagels, and we ended up with 6 platters. Make sure, again, that you're showing all the work there on your page. That's all that we have for today. So be sure to check in again next time with help with your homework.